System, record this story, my story, for I know you gave me this power for more than petty revenge, and I intend to use every bit of it. Modern Queen Tales presents The Ultimate Revenge System, The Price of Betrayal. Chapter 1, The Iron Taste of Rebirth. The last thing I remembered was the suffocating darkness, the sharp, metallic tang of my own blood filling my mouth, and the sickly sweet smell of expensive perfume. Such a simple girl, Richard had murmured, his voice, usually so smooth and charming, now dripping with cruel mockery. His hand, the same one that had slipped a diamond ring onto my finger months before, had now firmly held the pillow over my face. Beside him, Megan, his perpetually envious sister, had giggled. "Did you really think we'd let you keep the Lawrence inheritance, Sara? You were always too soft for business. Now you're just compost." The final moment was a blinding flash of pain, then nothing. Cold, empty, absolute nothingness. And then, the sound of the grandfather clock in my old bedroom chiming, bong, bong, bong. I gasped, shooting upright in the silk sheets, drenched in cold sweat. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked down, my hands trembling. They were whole, unstained. I was wearing my favorite light blue pajamas. I scrambled out of the bed, my bare feet hitting the cool marble floor of my master suite. I ran to the antique full-length mirror. My reflection stared back. Sara Lawrence, 22 years old, with high cheekbones, dark, severe eyes, and a mass of unbound black hair. It was me, but it wasn't the me who had just been suffocated to death an hour ago. I stared at the date on my phone, September 14th. The murder had happened on September 16th, 2 days from now. Richard and Megan had waited for the family to leave for a business trip before they struck. A cold, exhilarating clarity settled over me, pushing aside the terror. I had returned. A faint, ethereal blue screen flickered into existence just beyond my peripheral vision, visible only to me. Ultimate Revenge System. Initializing. Welcome, host Sara Lawrence. Binding complete. Time jump successful. 48 hours pre-critical event. Primary directive. Seek justice. Expose injustice. Claim retribution. Current status. Heiress. Threatened. Power level 0. The sterile, almost robotic text didn't terrify me. It felt like salvation. It felt like the map to a war I was now equipped to fight. Retribution. Richard had stolen my life, my future, and my family's legacy. Megan had poisoned every relationship I had. They had treated me as a stepping stone to the Lawrence fortune. Now, they were going to learn that a stepping stone can become a guillotine. I took a deep breath. The panic was gone, replaced by a singular, focused rage. System prompt. Initial quest. Injustice detected. The Lawrence family trust documents. Richard Chen is currently forging documents to seize control of your grandfather's Lawrence estate trust, declaring you mentally incompetent at the engagement party 48 hours. Immediate task. Retrieve and secure the original documents. Reward upon completion. Tier 1 power-up. Aura of absolute calm. And 100 system credits. The initial quest was about efficiency. This was the key to their entire plan. If I secured the documents, their foundation would crumble before they even knew I was awake. I knew exactly where my grandfather kept the real documents, a hidden safe behind a fake bookcase in the library, but Richard had changed the code. I walked into the library, my movements silent and purposeful. I found the ornate, carved mahogany bookcase and pressed the spot behind the bust of Caesar. The lock clicked, and the shelf swung inward. The safe door was a polished steel behemoth. The new keypad gleamed mockingly. System. I whispered, keeping my voice low and even, testing the waters. Can you help with the code? System response. Affirmative. System requires 10 system credits for basic reconnaissance. Current balance, 0. Alternative path. Utilize observation skills. Of course, no free lunch. I wasn't just handed the victory. I examined the keypad. Richard was meticulously clean, but he was also vain. I bent close, tilting my phone screen to catch the light at a low angle. There they were, the faintest traces of fingerprints and oil residue, specifically on the 1, 9, 7, and 3 keys. The order was harder, but I remembered Richard's obsession with a specific date, the day he first publicly secured a major deal, the deal he had used my money to finance. I tried the date, 1973. Click. The heavy safe door swung open. Inside, nestled beneath a velvet cloth, were the original, official Lawrence estate deeds. I removed them, along with my grandfather's private journal detailing the trust. I replaced them with a dummy folder containing blank paper, leaving everything else untouched. A familiar screen flashed before my eyes, brighter this time. Ding! Quest complete. Injustice exposed. Attempted, trust, theft, reward, claimed, plus Tier 1 power-up, aura of absolute calm, unlocked, plus 100 system credits added. A strange, soothing warmth, like a cool liquid gold, flowed from the top of my head and settled deep in my core. I felt the change instantly. The anxious knot that had lived in my stomach for years, a result of Richard's subtle gaslighting, dissolved. My mind, usually prone to spirals of fear and self-doubt, was now a serene, unshakable fortress. I felt in control, utterly, perfectly serene. This was the power of ultimate ascension. The small, successful act of vengeance already yielded an exponential reward. I smiled, a cold, genuine smile that didn't reach my eyes. Richard and Megan were playing chess, but they hadn't realized I was now playing the game with pieces that could fly. Chapter 2. The Engagement Party Massacre. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Richard was oblivious, gliding around the manor, giving charming, patronizing instructions to the servants. He saw me as a quiet, slightly frail woman, a beautiful accessory soon to be a financial puppet. I, however, used my aura of absolute calm. When Richard tried to subtly guilt-trip me about signing some preliminary documents, my response was perfectly smooth, logical, and devoid of the emotional reaction he craved. He stumbled, confused by my unnatural composure. It was glorious. The engagement party was set for the evening of September 16th, the very night I was meant to die. The grand ballroom of the Lawrence Manor, glittering with crystal and filled with every major figure in the city, was now my stage. I chose my outfit carefully, a severe, midnight blue silk gown, perfectly tailored, that emphasized my height and the icy quality of my eyes. No soft pastels this time. I looked like a queen, not a bride. When I descended the sweeping staircase, a hush fell over the crowd. Richard, waiting at the foot of the stairs, looked utterly handsome in his tailored tuxedo. He extended his hand, but I ignored it, walking straight past him to the dais where the microphone stood, reserved for their announcement. "Sara, darling." Richard's voice was strained, a tight mask of control. "The announcement is after the first toast." I took the microphone, the metallic coldness a pleasant contrast to the warmth of my own body. The aura hummed, making my voice carry with perfect, modulated confidence. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice clear and resonant, Thank you all for attending what Richard Chen and I hoped would be a joyous occasion. However, I'm afraid I have a slight change of program. Richard finally realized something was wrong. His eyes, usually charming brown, flashed with panic. He started toward me. "Sara, stop this!" he hissed, trying to wrench the microphone away. I pulled back, not violently, but with such a sharp, sudden movement that he stumbled slightly, looking clumsy and aggressive in front of the city's elite. Richard was, in fact, correct, I continued, a smile playing on my lips. He was going to make an announcement. An announcement that would have legally declared me, Sara Lawrence, to be mentally unstable, seizing control of the entire Lawrence estate and placing me under his guardianship. The ballroom erupted in a cacophony of whispers. Camera flashes popped like firecrackers. Richard's face went white. "She's lying! She's clearly distraught!" My eyes locked onto his, and I felt nothing but contempt. I gestured toward the two screens behind the dais. "I believe documentation is always superior to hysterics," I said. A technician I had hired earlier with 50 system credits to ensure loyalty pressed a button. The screens lit up, displaying two documents side by side. On the left, the original, legal Lawrence Estate Trust document, clearly detailing my sole, unimpeachable heir status, signed by my grandfather. On the right, a blatant forgery found in Richard's private office safe this morning, with my forged signature and a psychiatric report declaring my incompetence, time-stamped for presentation tonight. The sound in the ballroom dropped from a roar to an appalled silence. The betrayal was too large, too naked, too public. "And finally," I said, my voice rising just slightly, emphasizing the final blow, "to dispel any notion that he is a victim, I present a short, recorded conversation from 2 days ago, detailing his exact plan for tonight. I had simply recorded the moment of my first death using my phone, the phone I had woken up with." Richard's cruel voice, Megan's giggling, the distinct sounds of my struggle all played through the ballroom's massive, high-fidelity sound system. The sound was gruesome, shocking, and undeniable. The elite crowd recoiled as one. Richard Chen, the rising star of finance, was exposed not just as a thief, but as a would-be murderer. Megan, who had been hiding in the corner, finally snapped, rushing toward me, her face a mask of scarlet fury. "You little witch! You ruined us!" she screamed, raising her hand to strike. Before her hand could touch me, a new, sharp, and very satisfying system message appeared. Ding! Major quest complete. Injustice exposed. Attempted murder and high-level corporate fraud. Retribution met. Public humiliation. Complete. Status ruined. Complete. Reward claimed. Plus. Tier 2 power-up. Glimpse of truth. Unlocked. Plus. 500 system credits added. Plus. Item awarded. Spatial storage ring. Unlocked. As the new power flooded me, Megan's hand seemed to move in slow motion. I felt the glimpse of truth activate a cold, almost metallic awareness of intent. I saw a desperate, debt-ridden, malicious animal lashing out. I simply sidestepped, moving with a grace I didn't possess an hour ago, causing Megan to pitch forward and faceplant directly into the massive, 3-tiered engagement cake. Her expensive dress ruined by buttercream and her dignity utterly shredded by the laughter that followed. Richard was already being surrounded by security and police, who had entered the room based on a pre-arranged anonymous tip I had sent 10 system credits well spent. I looked at the chaos, the ruined cake, the police lights flashing outside, the horrified faces of the guests, and finally felt peace, the peace of absolute victory. "The engagement is off," I announced simply, walking away from the microphone and leaving my entire ruined life behind me. Chapter 3. The Spoils of War. I gave a quick statement to a trusted family lawyer who had been genuinely shocked by the evidence and retreated to the library. My first act was to examine my rewards. Glimpse of truth. This felt like a secondary layer of the aura, where the aura gave me emotional control, the glimpse gave me perception. I could now intuitively detect major lies, malicious intent, or hidden objects, mechanisms within a 10-meter radius. I tested it by simply focusing on the nearest antique statue. I immediately sensed a small, almost invisible chip, a tracking device Richard had installed months ago. Pathetic. Spatial storage ring. This item was the biggest surprise. I extended my hand, and a simple, unadorned silver band materialized on my ring finger. I tested it by focusing on the statue's tracking chip. Store. The chip vanished. Retrieve. It reappeared in my palm. The ring provided an instantly accessible, perfectly secure storage space about the size of a small walk-in closet. The implications for security and travel were vast. I now had mental fortitude, aura of absolute calm, perception, glimpse of truth, utility, spatial storage ring, currency. 600 system credits, all gained in less than 2 days. This was truly the ultimate ascension model I was living in. The immediate objective shifted from survival to expansion. Richard was gone, facing major fraud and attempted murder charges. Megan, still covered in cake, was in protective custody, likely facing charges of complicity and assault. They were neutralized, but they weren't utterly destroyed. And I still needed to expose the wider network of betrayal I knew had existed. I sat down at the library desk and opened the system interface again. System prompt. Secondary quest chain. Clean sweep. Injustice detected. Corporate espionage. Megan Chen, prior to her public downfall, passed critical design plans for the Lawrence Tech Division's new prototype, Phoenix, to a rival company, Vega Corp, led by the greedy CEO, Edward Kwang. This sabotage is scheduled to be revealed next week, crippling Lawrence Tech stock. Immediate task: retrieve the Phoenix plans from Edward Kwang's private safe and deliver them to your R&D head, Miss Xiao. Reward upon completion. Tier 3 power-up, reflex enhancement, and system shop unlocked. A physical infiltration quest. Perfect. The old Sara would have hired a dozen security consultants and worried herself sick. The new Sara, calm, perceptive, and armed with a teleporting storage locker, simply planned. Vega Corp's headquarters were in the new financial district, a sleek, modern glass tower. Security would be state-of-the-art, but I had glimpse of truth. I changed into a discreet, practical dark suit and hailed a car. With the aura shielding my emotions, I looked like a CEO making an emergency acquisition. I arrived at the Vega Tower at 1 a.m. The main lobby was empty, save for a single security guard at the desk. I activated Glimpse of Truth and approached the desk. My focus sharpened. I did more than just seeing the guard. I saw the faint, shimmering red lines of his hidden stress, his boredom, and most importantly, the clear, glowing blueprint of his access card on his belt. Emergency meeting with CEO Kwang, I said, my voice authoritative but low. He left his private tablet in his safe. I need access to his floor, now. The guard hesitated, but my calm was absolute. No emotional leakage, no nervous tells. I was the personification of cold, corporate necessity. I can't let anyone up without authorization, ma'am. If you hold up the retrieval of Kwang's proprietary data, That authorization will come directly from his legal team, confirming your termination. I countered, my eyes not leaving his. His stress level, visible to me as a throbbing red haze, spiked. He broke. Which floor, ma'am? Penthouse. And I need to borrow your key card for the elevator. He was too flustered to argue, seeing only the consequences of angering a powerful person. He handed over the card. I took the elevator to the 60th floor. The glimpse of truth painted the corridor in hues of security. Laser grids faint yellow, pressure plates, dark orange, and hidden cameras, blinking blue dots. I glided through the sensors effortlessly, using the precise information from Glimpse. A camera hidden in a smoke detector? I turned my head just so. A pressure plate under the rug? I stepped slightly to the left. The aura kept my breathing steady and my movements flawless. Edward Kwang's office was opulent and tacky. I immediately used Glimpse to find the safe. It was integrated into the wall paneling, perfectly flush, disguised as a charging station. The safe required a biometric scan. This was the true roadblock. I focused my mind. System? Any alternative? System response.
Alternative path. Utilizing spatial storage ring on the biometric lock mechanism requires 50 system credits and may temporarily disable the security for 30 seconds.
I immediately spent the credits. Authorize 50 system credits. Execute. Zzz. The ring on my finger glowed faintly. I focused on the biometric scanner unit. Store. The scanner vanished into the void of my ring. The security system, momentarily short-circuited by the sudden absence of its key component, flashed an error message on the wall panel and went into a brief standby mode. The safe door, now just a simple mechanical lock, clicked open. Inside, stacked next to a few bars of gold, were the Lawrence Tech Phoenix plans. They were bound in a green folder with the Vega Corp logo, a blatant confirmation of the betrayal. I pulled out the plans, focused on the green folder, and thought, store. The folder vanished. I retrieved the biometric scanner from the ring and placed it back on the wall panel. It flickered back to life, showing a generic, standby mode message. No alarms, no record of forced entry. I had entered, accessed a biometric safe, retrieved classified documents, and escaped without tripping a single system. I used the stairwell for my descent and walked out the front door, slipping the guard a $100 bill with a cool, dismissive nod. He barely registered me leaving. I drove straight to the home of Miss Shao, Lawrence Tech's brilliant but overworked R&D head, and placed the Phoenix plans on her kitchen counter, along with a note explaining the threat. Ding! High-priority quest, complete. Injustice exposed. Corporate sabotage. Phoenix project. Asset retained. Phoenix plans secured. Reward claimed. Plus Tier 3 power-up. Reflex enhancement. Unlocked. Plus System Shop. Unlocked. Plus 1,000 system credits added. A searing, rapid energy shot into my limbs. My muscles felt tighter, my reflexes lightning fast. I dropped a glass on the floor, and without conscious thought, my hand shot out and caught it inches from the marble. I could practically feel the air currents shift around me. I was becoming physically formidable, not just mentally, and the system shop was now open. I eagerly opened the interface. System Shop, Tier 1. Skill, Flawless Language Assimilation, 2000, SC. Instant mastery of any language spoken to you. Item, Cloak of Shadow Weave, 3,500. C. Grants, short-term, low-level physical invisibility, 30 seconds duration. Enhancement, rapid healing factor, 5,000. SC. Minor wound healing speed dramatically increased. Currency conversion, 1 SC equals $1,000. Limit, 500 SC divided by day. I had 1,600 SC. I immediately converted 500 SC into $500,000. The cash was instantly transferred to a new, untraceable offshore account, created automatically by the system. I was now mentally, physically, financially, and supernaturally untouchable, all because I refused to stay dead. Chapter 4. The Vicious Circle Closes. The fallout from the engagement party was immediate and catastrophic for Richard and Meghan. The news was everywhere: high finance meets attempted murder, with a side of cake-related humiliation. Richard was denied bail and was awaiting trial. Meghan, however, was released on a technicality. I knew she wouldn't stay quiet. She was a viper, and her only goal now was to drag me down with her. True to form, she didn't disappoint. The next morning, gossip columns were abuzz with a new rumor. Sara Lawrence, the victim, was apparently a debt-ridden gambler. The articles included forged documents showing huge gambling losses, designed to invalidate my claim to the Lawrence estate and paint me as an unstable villain. This was the injustice I needed to expose. Meghan's smear campaign had a very public goal: destroy my credibility. My goal was simple: destroy her credibility permanently. I found Meghan at a high-end, exclusive cafe, attempting to rally her few remaining socialite friends. She looked pale and brittle, still smelling faintly of defeat, but her eyes held a desperate, manic malice. I walked into the cafe, my entrance subtle but dominant. I used my aura, and every head turned toward me, but no one dared speak. Meghan saw me and sneered. "Look who it is! The murder victim who brought her own autopsy report." I sat down at the table, leaning in. "Hello, Meghan. I'm here to discuss the rumors you're spreading." "They're not rumors. They're truth, you little—" I cut her off, my voice a calm, flat line. "Lies. But let's talk about a truth you're hiding. The truth about the loan you took out 3 years ago to save your failing boutique." Meghan froze. Glimpse of truth showed me a sudden, intense spike of cold dread around her. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, attempting to look bored.
I'm talking about the $50 million you borrowed from the shadowy Phoenix syndicate and secured with the unregistered deed to your mother's holiday villa,
I continued, every word landing with the weight of a judge's hammer. "You haven't made a single payment in 2 years. They are coming for that villa next week, and they don't negotiate politely, do they?" Her face was utterly exposed. The shame, the terror, the guilt, it was all clear to me. "How do you know that?" she whispered, terrified. This was her deepest, darkest, most ruinous secret. "The system," I almost replied, but caught myself. "Let's just say I have a better intelligence network than you realize. Your choice is simple. You can keep spreading lies about me and face the syndicate alone next week, or you can earn a temporary reprieve." "Reprieve? What do you want?" she choked out. "I want a public, recorded retraction and apology for the gambling rumors. It needs to be televised, dramatic, and humiliating, and I want you to name your source, Richard." Meghan looked at her remaining friends, who were now quietly backing away from the table. She looked at the police report that had ruined her brother. She looked at her own inevitable financial ruin. "Fine," she hissed, tears of impotent rage filling her eyes. "But I'll get you for this." "No, Meghan," I corrected gently. "You won't. You'll be too busy being insignificant." The next day, Meghan Chen gave a tearful, nationally televised press conference, claiming she had been emotionally unstable after the engagement disaster and had been fed false information by her manipulative brother, Richard. She retracted every rumor, declaring me a victim and herself a misguided fool. The public loved the drama, and the system loved the exposure. Ding! Milestone quest Complete. Injustice exposed. Attempted character assassination. Retribution met. Public retraction and ultimate humiliation. Reward claimed. Plus, Tier 4 power-up. Psychic shield unlocked. Plus, system shop upgrade. Tier 2 unlocked. Plus, 2,000 system credits added. A new wave of power surged through me, this time settling behind my eyes and around my consciousness. The psychic shield was in no way flashy. It was foundational. It meant that nobody could mentally influence me, use powerful suggestion, or even read my genuine intentions unless they were far more powerful than the system could currently register. My mind was now completely my own, a crucial defense in a world where I knew the power structures ran deeper than just business. Chapter 5. Unmasking the Power Broker. With Meghan and Richard neutralized, I spent the following week consolidating the Lawrence estate. The aura made every boardroom negotiation a cakewalk. The glimpse of truth allowed me to sense every hidden agenda, every pocket contract, and every potential mole. I fired 24 people Richard and Meghan had installed, and recovered millions in diverted funds. My system credits surged, and I immediately checked the upgraded Tier 2 System Shop. System Shop Tier 2. Skill. Flawless language assimilation. 2,000 skill. Purchased. Item. Cloak of Shadow Weave. 3,500 SC. Enhancement. Rapid Healing Factor. 5,000 SC. Skill. Master of Disguise. 2,500. Allows perfect physical and vocal mimicry. Item. Minor Energy Blade. 7,000 SC. A collapsible, high-frequency energy weapon. I purchased flawless language assimilation instantly. I could already feel foreign phrases I'd only vaguely heard before settling into my mind, perfect and ready to use. I was preparing for a global stage, but there was one final shadow from my past life. Richard and Meghan weren't smart enough to orchestrate a murder and corporate coup alone. They had a backer, the one who truly wanted the Lawrence estate gone. My memory of the final moments was murky, but I recalled Richard mentioning the master. I initiated a high-level corporate audit, using my newly recovered files and glimpse of truth. It didn't take long. The trail led to a shell company, and that shell company led directly to Michael Steyn. Michael Steyn, billionaire, philanthropist, and the unchallenged king of the city's power brokers. He was too untouchable, too clean, and too influential. He was the real enemy, and he had been using Richard as a disposable proxy. My next quest was to take him down. System prompt. Apex. Quest. The Master's Fall. Injustice detected. Organized corporate terrorism and attempted homicide. Primary target. Michael Steyn. Steyn's plan is to acquire Lawrence Tech during the stock crash planned by Meghan, now thwarted, using his influence to bury Richard's crimes and then eliminate the Lawrence family line. Immediate task. Expose Steyn's hidden financial terrorism cell, the Black Ledger, and deliver the evidence to global regulators. Reward upon completion. Tier 5 power-up. Minor telekinesis. And system shop upgrade. Tier 3 unlocked. This was the final boss, and the system was rewarding me accordingly, a major power jump to minor telekinesis. Steyn's public office was impenetrable. His security was legendary, and he was protected by layers of legal immunity. He was untouchable, just like I was 2 days ago. I knew I couldn't barge in. I needed to infiltrate his most private space. Steyn was hosting a private, high-security black-tie gala at his secluded mountain estate the following evening. This was where the real power plays happened, away from prying eyes. I used 100 system credits to access the estate's security blueprints. Stain had a hidden panic room, triple-layered with titanium and concrete, where he kept his most sensitive data, the Black Ledger. My plan was precise and swift, leveraging every single ability I had gained. Phase 1. Infiltration. I utilized my reflex enhancement to climb the mountain path past the outer guards, moving faster and quieter than any human should. I used the spatial storage ring to temporarily store 2 infrared sensors, bypassing them without a trace. Phase 2. The vault. I reached the estate and, using the Master of Disguise skill, I had quickly purchased it with my boosted SC. I took the form of a minor waiter. The psychic shield blocked the probing gazes of Stain's personal security detail. I located the hidden panic room, disguised as a wine cellar. I needed the code. I found Stain in the main ballroom, giving a smug, self-congratulatory speech. I focused the glimpse of truth on him. He wasn't thinking of the code, but he was thinking of his latest trophy acquisition, a diamond necklace for his mistress, and the specific date he bought it. Glimpse was an abstract connection, not mind-reading, but it gave me the key association. I located the date,
1103.
I returned to the wine cellar. The lock required a 10-digit code. Stain was predictable. The 10-digit code was his phone number, with the date of the necklace purchase,
1103.
replacing the last 4 digits. Click. The titanium door opened. Phase 3. The Black Ledger. Inside, the panic room was a minimalist, cold vault. On a small terminal was the data drive containing the Black Ledger, the full list of shell companies, illegal acquisitions, and corporate assassinations. As I reached for it, Stain's voice boomed from the speaker system. I was wondering when you'd show up, Sara. Richard was useless, but he gave me the perfect warning. Never underestimate a woman who thinks she's already died. I was caught, but I was not afraid. The aura kept my mind razor sharp. Suddenly, the room sealed, and a high-frequency pulse began to fill the air, designed to induce panic and cognitive failure, the exact kind of psychic attack I hadn't known I needed to defend against. The psychic shield flared, and I felt nothing but a slight tingle. Stain's ultimate defense failed completely. Clever, Stain, I said into the air. But you forgot that I'm not the woman you killed. Then you'll just die again. I grabbed the data drive and slammed it into my spatial storage ring. The moment the drive vanished, the final system notification appeared. Ding! Apex quest complete. Injustice exposed. Global financial terrorism. Michael Stain. Retribution met. Data secured. Reward claimed. Plus Tier 5 power-up. Minor telekinesis. Unlocked. Plus system shop upgrade. Tier 3 unlocked. Plus 5,000 system credits added. The new power was staggering. It felt like an invisible, powerful muscle wrapped around my will. I focused on the heavy titanium door, feeling the latent energy. Move. A loud, grinding creak filled the air as the massive vault door, sealed only moments ago, was wrenched outward a foot, bending the steel frame like wet cardboard. What was that sound? Stain's voice was frantic over the intercom. I ignored him. I walked out of the panic room, leaving the damaged, expensive door as my calling card. I made my way to the perimeter, the adrenaline high of the victory making me float. I was no longer just the heiress, Sara Lawrence. I was a force of retribution, and my journey of ultimate ascension had only just begun. I was powerful, wealthy, and my enemies were collapsing behind me like dominoes. I had everything, and the system was waiting for the next injustice to expose. Chapter 6. The Conclave's Shadow. The moment I was clear of Stain's mountain estate, I used my minor telekinesis to subtly trip a few motion sensors on the opposite side of the perimeter, sending Stain's remaining security detail on a wild goose chase while I sped away. Telekinesis went beyond bending steel. It was for precision, for chaos theory applied to security systems. The next morning, I delivered the Black Ledger, a simple, encrypted flash drive, to a hand-picked team of regulators. Within hours, the financial world shuddered. Michael Stain was not merely arrested. His entire global network collapsed. His reputation was instantly vaporized, turning a revered financial titan into a pariah overnight. Another public, undeniable victory. With Stain's immediate threat gone, I finally had time to evaluate the new spoils of war. I now had 7,100 system credits. First, the System Shop. System Shop, Tier 3. New items added and prices adjusted. Item: Cloak of Shadow Weave, 3,500. Grants: short-term, low-level, physical, invisibility, 30 seconds, duration. Enhancement: Rapid Healing Factor, 5,000. Minor wound healing speed dramatically increased. Skill: Kinetic Dampening, 5,000. Skill: allows the user to absorb and redirect minor physical impacts. For example, falls, close-range punches. Item: Minor Energy Blade, 7,000 C. A collapsible high-frequency energy weapon. Skill: Data Overload, 4,000 secs. Ability to instantly process and understand complex, non-visual data streams, for example, financial markets, encoded broadcasts. I never hesitated. I needed reliable stealth for the unknown threats to come. I purchased the Cloak of Shadow Weave, 3,500 score. A folded length of dense, dark fabric materialized in the spatial storage ring. When worn, it felt like nothing. I tested it in my private study. 30 seconds of low-level invisibility, enough to break line of sight and slip past a casual observer. Perfect. Next, I bought Data Overload, 4,000 SC. This put my system credits back down to a lean 100 SC, but the skill felt essential. The world was run on data, and now I could feel the flow of information. The Phoenix plans, the Lawrence stock fluctuations, the details of Stain's financial web all snapped into my mind with perfect clarity. Smart didn't even begin to cover it. I was the interface. But the real development was the chilling discovery on the Black Ledger. Michael Stain was not the master. He was just the CEO of one division. His organization was called the Conclave. The Black Ledger revealed that the Conclave was a transnational syndicate of old money and power, coordinating financial warfare and technological suppression across the globe. Their true objective was the Phoenix Project itself, a clean energy technology that would dismantle their fossil fuel and power generation monopolies. My attempt to take down Stain had only been a mosquito bite to a giant. The giant was now swatting back. System prompt, escalation quest, the first strike, injustice detected, technological suppression, the Conclave. The Conclave has mobilized a representative, Agent Zero, to discredit Lawrence Tech's CEO, you, by exposing a non-existent past flaw in the Lawrence Tech manufacturing process. Time to ruin a critical government contract signing ceremony tomorrow. Immediate task: expose Agent Zero's identity and mechanism of sabotage during the contract ceremony. Secure the contract. Reward upon completion: Tier 6 power-up, advanced data manipulation, and 10,000 system credits. This was the jump from corporate revenge to international espionage. Agent Zero, a political stage. The stakes were astronomical. Chapter 7, The Contract Ceremony. The contract signing was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the Ministry of Commerce, a high-security, highly public event. The contract was worth billions and would launch the Phoenix Project globally. My enemies needed to stop me now, or I would become too big to crush. I used data overload to monitor all chatter around the ministry and the Lawrence Tech contract. I scanned every public data feed, every encrypted communication. I found nothing direct, but I sensed a subtle, unnatural stillness, a quiet vacuum of information around one specific person, Minister Jones, the head of the Ministry of Commerce. The glimpse of truth confirmed it. Minister Jones, the man who was supposed to sign the contract with me, radiated a deep, malignant intent that masked professional composure. He wasn't the agent, but he was compromised. I used the master of disguise and entered the building as a low-level press assistant, slipping past the inner security ring with ease. In the opulent green room, Minister Jones was reviewing the contract with his aide. I focused my minor telekinesis. It was a delicate touch, like invisible fingers. I merely adjusted. The aide's pen, resting on the desk, rolled forward, forcing the aide to lean over and retrieve it. In that half-second of distraction, I telekinetically slid a small, silver capsule a microsensor from my ring and nudged it onto the minister's contract binder. The sensor, bought from the Tier 3 shop for 50 SC, was instantly reading and transmitting data. I withdrew, taking my place in the front row of the press seating, the aura of absolute calm making me seem nothing more than a curious spectator. The ceremony began. Minister Jones and I stood opposite each other at the signing table, two identical pens resting on two copies of the contract. Minister Jones began his remarks, his voice smooth and professional. The Lawrence Tech Phoenix Project represents a new era of global responsibility. I activated data overload, focusing on the minister's communication channels. I felt the signal. The minister was transmitting something not through his voice, but a tiny burst from the microsensor I had just planted. Glimpse of truth showed me the malicious intent was focused on the contract itself. It was a targeted, electronic attack designed to substitute a clause into the digital version of the document, invalidating it instantly upon signing and exposing me to crippling liability. The flaw was meant to appear as if I had missed it, a sign of the unstable Sara Lawrence. I realized Agent Zero was not present. Agent Zero was the minister's embedded communication channel. The minister picked up his pen, a triumphant sneer flickering across his face. To a successful future. This was the moment. The ultimate ascension required maximum public exposure. I used my minor telekinesis with total commitment. I decided not to target the minister. That would be too sloppy. I targeted the environment. With a silent, focused effort, I telekinetically seized the massive, antique crystal chandelier hanging directly over the signing table. It was about theatrical physics. The 3-ton chandelier swung. With a sound like a great metallic groan, the chandelier swung violently on its main chain, missing the minister's head by mere inches. The sudden, terrifying motion caused the minister to recoil, his pen scratching a long, ugly line across his copy of the contract. But the real target was the digital link. The violent vibration caused a momentary feedback in the ministry's wireless hub, visible to me via data overload as a sudden spike and crash. The transmission, the malicious data insertion failed. Chaos erupted. Guards rushed in, journalists screamed, and Minister Jones, his composure shattered, looked up at the swaying, dangerous, crystal death trap above him. "Security breach!" someone yelled. I stood up, discarding the press badge. I walked calmly up to the table while the minister was still trembling. Minister Jones, I said, my voice magnified by the aura of absolute calm, cutting through the noise. Perhaps you should explain why your pen was about to sign a contract that was secretly being rewritten by an external agent, and why the microtransmitter on your desk was coordinating the sabotage. I pointed directly at the microsensor I had planted, which was now flashing red in its failure state, its signal visible only to me, but its physical presence undeniable to security. The minister, exposed, tried to deny it, but the proof was literally staring the ministry's own security chief in the face. They seized the minister and the contract. The contract was secure, the enemy exposed, and Lawrence Tech's integrity was publicly validated by the very chaos my actions had caused. The ultimate humiliation was reserved for the unseen conclave. I had not only stopped their sabotage, I had done it by publicly revealing that one of their high-value assets was operating at the highest levels of the government. Ding! Escalation quest complete. Injustice exposed. Global technological suppression and political compromise. Retribution met. Agent 0. Minister Jones exposed. Contract secured. Public humiliation complete. Reward claimed. Plus, Tier 6, power up. Advanced data manipulation. Unlocked. Plus system shop upgrade. Tier 4 unlocked. Plus 10,000 system credits added. The power surge this time was different. It felt cerebral, a pure computational upgrade. Advanced data manipulation settled into my mind, and I knew instantly that I could not only read global data streams, but influence them. A stock price, an election poll, an encrypted message, all were now subject to my will. I was no longer merely defending my legacy. I was shaping the world's future, one exposed injustice at a time. The conclave had struck once and failed. They would strike again, but next time they would be facing a true ghost in the machine. The end.
If you enjoyed this quick escape, hit the subscribe button for new stories twice a week. Until then, I'll see you at the next flip of the pages.